Hello. As usual, I will give an update on my numbers, my hours, my revenue. And I'll do like a general January recap really quick. And then I'll talk about my marketing daily habits that I've been doing and what's been going on there. And then as usual, thoughts as a therapist, and then we'll end there. Quick little update. Boom, 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 done. I'll finish recording and then I'm gonna make some brownies. Okay, so first of all, numbers. This week, I made the lowest amount so far this month. I made $285 in revenue, which gives me a total for all of January, $1,430, which is sounds kind of nice, but my expenses are roughly around $1,000, which means if I were to take out money, I would be getting $430 in January for seeing, I don't know how many clients I saw. So $430. Not the best. That's why my goal is to take home $2,000. So that's like 3, 4, 5 times the amount that I'm taking home right now. Yeah. Okay. I actually got an inquiry. That's right. I have a consult call on Saturday, and I like to think it's because I have tried this little marketing thing for a week, so it hasn't even, I think it's just barely been a week since I started doing little tiny things every day, and I guess it's kind of working. I mean, I don't know if it'll turn into a client, but I did get an inquiry, so maybe if I keep doing this, something will happen. No, I'm pretty sure something will happen. Just, yes, it is good news that I have one new inquiry. So that means for January, I had 2 inquiries and 0 new clients. I mean, to be determined, this last person could be a client, but I don't know yet. And then I had 49 total hours. That includes clinical hours, workshops, supervision, all that. 49 hours for a total of 1,248 hours accumulated out of 3,000. Okay, I kind of mentioned last week about how like workshop hours and supervision, that all counts for the 3,000, but like it doesn't really matter for me. What I mean is like there's a minimum number of clinical hours I need, and I need roughly 12 client hours per week to meet my goal of getting licensed by January 2028. So since I'm not meeting 12, all these extra workshop hours, they don't really, like, it doesn't really matter because I'm gonna be limited by not having enough clinical hours. That's what I wanted to say there. I feel like the daily marketing things that I mentioned last week, just like doing updates on Google Business, website, directories, things like that. I think it is really good, especially if I keep doing it. Yeah, I think I like, a part of me wants to see like a new client and like see results immediately, but I know that's probably not likely, but I should continue doing this because this is probably working. It's like YouTube where like, no one watches it for the first many years but you have to just keep going. Yeah. I remember reading somewhere about how like once you get a habit going and you feel like it's just starting to get boring, that's perfect. That's where you want to get, and that is for sure not where you want to stop doing the habit, because it means that like it's like kind of you're accustomed to it. It's part of a habit, and it's not like as novel anymore. So maybe it's not even as hard anymore. But that's like the most important part, is to just keep doing some of these boring things because it will pay off. And these are just things I'm telling myself. Great. Okay. And then the last thing that I'm tracking is my YouTube hours. So I'm at 1,269 hours, which is a total of 4 hours that I gained this month. And something I need to say about this is that YouTube looks at the last 365 days of watch hours you've received. So it actually doesn't mean I've gained only 4 hours this month. It probably means I've gained more. So probably sometime in February, my hours that I gain as a therapist will surpass my watch hours, which is probably a good thing. It probably means I'll be a therapist and make more money before I make anything on YouTube. Yeah, this week for my Google business, I posted another picture. That was the update I did for my my website. I copied a Google review and put it on my website so people can also see what reviews that people are sharing. But I was considering actually writing like a comment on a review, like thank you. But apparently I'm not even supposed to do that because it acknowledges that I might have known them or I might have been their therapist, and I can't do that publicly. And then I also messaged somebody, actually I'm gonna call somebody from my old associate program today. Good. Talking to my therapist. And then Thursday, directory. So I guess I'll look into one of the other directories I'm thinking about joining. Yeah, I'll probably do that. Oh, it's interesting because there was like a group chat in my clinic that was like, hey, do people actually get referrals from Therapy Den? And pretty much everyone was like, no. So I was like, oh, okay, great. I'm definitely not gonna add myself to that directory. And I actually did write a blog for Saturday last week. That was surprising. I mean, yeah, these things are probably minuscule and I probably won't really see the benefits of it for a while. But you know, in maybe like March or April, I'm still really not seeing any more new clients. I need to change it up. But until then, I don't want to change too many things. This will do for now. We'll see how things go. And then my thoughts as a therapist. Okay, so I mentioned doing this EFT training last week, and there was a Gestalt training this week that I wanted to talk about. I thought it was like super good. Yeah, I thought it was really good. Basically, this Gestalt therapist, she uses a lot of different theories and she's very good at like blending all of them together and kind of like summarizing what one theory is saying and like how that actually is very similar to how another theory says something else. And like all these frameworks have their own language and they make it seem like they're like inventing something new, but really a lot of them have all of them, I think, actually have overlap with other frameworks. We're all kind of just saying the same thing, but they're slightly different. But anyways, this was specifically about like, what is the whole point of therapy from like a Gestalt perspective? And she mentioned like one of the main things is to finish the Gestalt needs cycle. So I've like kind of talked about it in my previous video where basically like we have unsatisfaction stressors or like things don't feel quite good when we aren't able to finish a need. And part of the need cycle basically is like noticing that you have a need, deciding if you have the resources to actually do something about it, taking action, integrating that, and then rest. And so all of our needs, even just like, oh, I'm thirsty, can be mapped onto this need cycle. There are other needs such as, oh, I want to feel love. That fits onto a need cycle. Every need fits on a need cycle. But the problem is when we are a child and when we are very young, we rely on our caregivers and other people to provide give us our needs, because as an infant, we aren't able to do it. So in that process, many of us have to morph ourselves in a way that is acceptable for the caregiver to give us what we want. Sometimes the way that we morph ourselves then becomes rigid and we have this whole personality identity around the way that we have morphed, and we are not flexible enough to not do that. For example, let's say, actually, I don't even know if I understand this well enough to give my own example. The more I talk about this, the more I'm like, do I really get it if I can't really explain it back to you? Maybe another way that I kind of think about it that helps is for me to use IFS language, internal family systems, instead of Gestalt to explain the cycle, because they're kind of similar in a way. Like Gestalt is saying there's a needs cycle and we get interrupted. IFS says that there is a part of us that we exile, and there are other parts of us, such as the manager and the firefighter, that protects us from this exile from coming out. I guess like in a Gestalt way, that's pretty much saying there's a need for the exile to like express itself or come out, but it's always stopped because the manager or firefighter comes out. Yeah, I should really think about how to actually explain this. Because if I can't explain it to you, how am I supposed to explain it to a client without using all these clinical words? Like, unless a client goes to therapy really often, they aren't gonna know what I mean when I say exile, firefighter, and manager. And so what do I actually mean by exile, firefighter, and manager? Exile is a part of us that we tend to, it's usually like a more childlike part of us that we tend to block away and kind of push away because we're an adult. That's what I kind of think, but that actually uses a lot of assumptions because I don't think in the language they say that it is childlike or that as an adult we push them away. I think those are just things that I kind of say to make more sense to the client. I have a book actually, let me. Okay. Okay, so this book, Parts Work, I mean, I guess this is more Gestalty in a way because it's not specifically about IFS, but I guess the way they describe the exile part is a vulnerable part that can be easily hurt if we perceive ourselves as criticized or rejected by others. These vulnerable child parts are easily embarrassed or shy. So I guess that's kind of typically what gets exiled. Like the exiled part is a part that's kind of like protected by all these other parts, such as the critical part or a judging part or a manager part. And those parts basically are built to. Okay, finishing off the video on my phone. Okay, what am I saying? So these other protective parts are built to protect the more vulnerable part. And yes, so many times these vulnerable parts end up getting exiled because the protective part is so strong. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. How is this related to this? Oh yes, so when these other protective parts of us are become more rigid and they don't know how to make space for the vulnerable part to come out, that's when it can feel very stuck and rigid, and usually the more rigid these parts behave, the more pain there was when the protective parts were created. Yes, okay. This is good for me. This is me teaching myself the things I already know, but really questioning if I really know what I'm talking about. Okay, so I don't know if any of that made sense, but to me, what it was helpful was connecting the exiled part to specifically the word vulnerable part, childlike part that is easily shamed, embarrassed. I think sometimes I assume they're the same thing, but I don't think necessarily every vulnerable part is always exiled. I think that's just what happens when these other parts don't let this vulnerable part out. That is not what the talk was about. The talk was actually about how like new research and theories and knowledge about trauma, how that can be integrated into this like needs cycle and parts work. And okay, once I edit and cut this video, we'll see if any of this makes sense. It probably is not going to make sense because it doesn't quite make sense when I say it out loud, but that is just where I am right now, you know? Like, it's like when you're in a math class and you're like, oh yeah, I totally get this in the class, and then you try to explain it to your friend, you're like, maybe I don't. I feel like that's where I am right now. Like when I was listening to her talk, I was like, yeah, this all makes sense to me. But now that I'm sitting with it, clearly, I don't get it as much as I thought. Okay. Well, that's it for today. Bye.